Good evening, everyone, and welcome to When the Shift Hits the Fan. My name's Mark Jeffrey. I'm here again this week with my co-host, Linda Lehman, and a very, very special guest, a very good friend of mine. Tonight we're going to talk about something that's extremely important and extremely serious. Many of us have different types of addictions in our lives. Some of them we don't even recognize that we have. Some of us may be addicted to chocolate and foods, different things. It could be sex, it could be alcohol. Some things destroy our lives, and some things we manage to skate through. But the one thing that's always the same when all of this happens is that we're always trying to get rid of some kind of a pain. And it could be from a loss of someone, the breakup of a relationship, that you can't lose weight, that someone told you were ugly, someone said, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were 30, I thought you were 50, you have so many wrinkles. So many things can happen in our lives that spur our insecurities and make us do things that we wouldn't normally do. Tonight we're going to hear a very compelling story from Shauna. And I'm going to tell you from my personal part, I'm going to kind of start this off a little bit here because I knew her through this period. And for all intents and purposes, you would think there was absolutely nothing wrong. Happy girl, living her life. We were the toast of the town, actual celebrities in the city that we lived, went everywhere, did everything, but there was an underlying something going on with Shauna, and I will let her tell it in her own way. And I know Linda's going to jump in here. We're going to ask Shauna some questions. But here's the thing, people. You may not recognize that this is going on, and that's why I thought it was so important for Shauna to be here tonight, because we didn't think that it was this bad. We didn't understand why she was doing the things that she was doing, and no one was around her enough to actually catch on to the pattern. So, Shauna, go back. Tell us where this all started. Tell us a little bit about you. And I know we only have a half-hour show. We might even have to bring you back here again to talk more about this. But how did this all start? You had a normal life. What happened?
Well, it's really interesting, Mark. I have to say that at the time I didn't even know it was happening. I didn't know that I was becoming an addict. And for me, it was quite a few years later, as I started to proceed into my recovery, that I had the full understanding of why I was where I was, why I became an addict, and where I was each moment and step throughout the way. At the time, had no clue. Started basically in 1995. I was with my family and friends, loved to go out to Vegas. We would go to Vegas all the time, and I wasn't a gambler. I might play $20 on a blackjack table. That was it. But I had experienced something very traumatic in my life. I had saw my father pass away in front of me. I was 25 years old, had never dealt with anything of this experience, and watching my dad die was just too much for me to handle. A series of events had happened soon after that were traumatic or emotional, and because I didn't know how to deal with it, I escaped. Unbeknownst to me, when I, here in the city would play what was called VLT machines.
Mm-hmm. That's slot machines for everybody in the States.
Right, slot machines for the States, VLTs here, and would play a couple bucks, never think anything of it, and eventually it became worse and worse and worse, till it was 8 years of gambling.
No, and I remember that. And I'll tell you this, guys. I mean, we'd be out doing something, and Shauna would hit the slot, so to speak, and pretty soon I'd get bored, and I'd be going like, Shauna, I'm going home now. And she'd go, that's okay, I'm fine, And I always felt bad, not because I was thinking addiction in any way, shape, or form, but just leaving her there. But there was nothing I could say or do that would make you leave that slot machine. At all.
And the thing was, eventually it became to the point where you didn't want to be interrupted. You would go sometimes with friends or hang out, And eventually what happens with an addiction is you don't want to have to share your addiction with other people. So it's just you and that solitary moment of whatever your addiction is.
Well, Shauna, what is the internal mechanism on that? Like not sharing it? Is it something that you feel that it's actually special in your life and special to you, that it's helping you get through pain? Like, and I know you didn't recognize it at the time, but looking back on it, what was happening there?
It was just purely an escape from everything. So when you start feeding that addiction, whatever addiction it is, food, like you said, sex, work, exercise, for me it was gambling, when you're feeding that addiction, everything else escapes. Your worries, your family, your friends, any situation, whether it's a bad or a good, you just lose it all, and you don't have to think about all the things that are going on in your life. And for me, there was, the major event of my dad dying, but a series of events thereafter for 8 years. Any little thing that would happen would trigger me to want to gamble. And it was my place. And eventually it got to the point where after so many years, you become embarrassed. Like, I was truly, honestly embarrassed. I would walk into a place and look around to ensure that I didn't know anybody, because I didn't want people to see me. And if people did see me, I'd be like, oh, I was just here for a few moments and I got to leave soon. But I wouldn't. I'd be there for hours and hours until the place would close and I'd have to leave.
Yeah, and folks, just so you know this, I can remember one particular night, and we were going from the nightclub that I was managing, and we were going across town to somewhere else because I happened to be off work or something that night. And I swear on the Bible, every place that we went by, from the one place we were going to the one place or coming from and going to, Shauna wanted us to stop. Isn't that right, Shauna? You remember that night?
You know what? Unfortunately, I really don't, but that seems about right for where I was in my life, because that wasn't the only time. I mean, it was every time. Every time I'd go out.
Yeah, see, that was all my experience was, yeah.
Right.
And I think if I would have been around you more, I would have probably said something or done something. I don't know. But it looks so, you know what? Linda, hop in here too, because, man, doesn't that seem innocent? You're just going out and throwing some money at the slot machine. Doesn't that sound innocent?
Oh, it does sound innocent, Mark, and I've been to Vegas a few times myself, and I've even been to one of the places that my mom likes to go occasionally is Tunica, which is a little bit south of Memphis, and I've gone with her too, and it all looks so innocent. People come in and they play, and even my mom, she goes and she plays. I mean, I go in and I set myself just a $20 limit, and that's just $20 that I know that I can just blow if I want to, and then I'm done. But I know, just listening to Shauna, that there comes a point in time, and I guess where's the happy medium, where all of a sudden it's gone from just a game that we play or that somebody plays to now it's at the farthest extent of what it can be.
Well, and the thing, too, is that no one ever grows up to say, I want to be an addict. And if someone would have said to me, even a month before I kind of got into gambling, or even at that time when I would first play, like, you're going to become an addict, I would have told them, you're full of it. Because to me, playing at the beginning, playing those VLTs was boring. No money was coming out, just a little piece of paper. I didn't really, enjoy it. I would occasionally play, and then occasionally became more and more, and then, a bunch of friends of us would go, and you just don't realize, and that's the same with any type of addiction. It starts off, like you said, Linda, very innocently, $20, and that's it. And then next thing you know, it's your paychecks. It's your inheritance that your father left you. It's your RSPs. It's maxed out credit cards. It's more, right? It's everything you have.
And
I think that, they all start that way, doesn't it, Linda? Shauna, I mean, we all do that, having a couple of drinks after work because we've had a stressful day, or a drink, 2 drinks, 3 drinks. Next thing you know, you're putting yourself to sleep with alcohol. I think if anybody out there says that people who have addictions are light-minded or that they don't have any strength within them, you're damn wrong. Because there's one thing I do know about most of the people that are addicted is they are that strong, but they also are that open and vulnerable to the world. They're the most generous, giving people that I actually know. And I think that part of that is, where it can lead you to that, where it can be so innocently put in front of you and so easy to grab onto. Well, Shauna, travel forward in time then. I mean, when did you realize that, this is a huge problem? I'm kind of thinking I know when you're talking about, the debts that were racked up, but what happened? Where did you go? What did you do? What happened in the middle of this to make you understand this is what was going on and then to actually do something about it?
Well, I had tried to stop gambling in about 2006. I had gone to an actual Gamblers Anonymous GA meeting, and I had stopped for about 2-3 months, and it was just actually on the pressure of my mother, who knew that something wasn't right but didn't know to the full degree. And so I started, and then the person that was my sponsor at the time, who had been clean for quite a few years, in about 2.5 months into the program, into my program, he relapsed. And I remember how devastated I was, and I was thinking, if this man can go this long for this many years and relapse, what hope do I have? And I left the program. And then it happened, and I remember this day like it was just yesterday. It was like any other time that I'd gone gambling. It was a Saturday morning. I got up first thing. My son I had at the time a little boy. He was 6 years old, and he was off with his dad for the weekend. And so I had, grabbed my pack of smokes and I went off to the local pub and was there at 11 a.m. as soon as those doors opened. And I didn't stop until the bar closed. I smoked 3 packs of cigarettes. I had actually didn't even have a bite to eat, probably sat there and had how many drinks after drinks after drinks and gambled. It was almost like the 3 were hand in hand that day. And I had come home like I had on weekends before or evenings before, where I'm lying in bed, and the reality of it all hits of, how much money was spent, that sort of thing. And this night, I had actually come out a little bit of cash ahead. But I remember laying there, and I wasn't feeling good. I was sick to my stomach. My lungs were just, I could barely breathe. It was almost like I was having a bit of an anxiety attack, because it was the reality of everything. Now I wasn't in front of that machine anymore, and reality hit. So I just spent, over 12 hours in front of a VLT machine. And literally, I remember sitting up in bed, and I'm staring ahead of myself in bed, and I'm crying. And I just said, God, just help me get through this. Just one more, just help me get through this. I don't know what more I can do, because I'm at a breaking end here. And all I heard was a voice literally out loud said, you need to stop or you will die. And I just sat there in my bed and I cried. And it was just the most emotional moment for me to have to hear those words and the realization that, if I keep this up, I will be dead, because if I can't live this, it's not healthy for me, it's not healthy for my son, and I don't know what I would personally or physically do anymore. And the next day I just woke up and I just begun my day like any other day, and that day turned into the next day and into the next day, and it was a Friday, so that was Sunday morning. That following Friday, I found a GA meeting that was on a Friday night, because that's the nights I would do the most damage. It's the weekend, paydays. Yeah. That's when I would do the damage. And so I found a GA meeting on a Friday night, and I decided I was going to get my butt into that room. And that's where it finally hit me that I was not alone, that that I was like anybody else in that room. Nobody looked like an addict. Nobody looked like, oh my goodness, everybody looked normal like me. And everybody's stories varied on what their addiction was for the gambling. It could be VLTs, racetracks, scratch and win tickets, lottery tickets, bingos, casinos, whatever the case may be. And I found a group of people there that I could relate to. And at the end of that meeting, I never got hugged so much and thanked for being there and sharing my story and crying and being vulnerable. And that was the first time I finally showed people who Shauna was.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the start of my recovery. And that was February 22nd, 2003.
And Shauna, that was too, I think, in that moment, you could be yourself because there wasn't anybody there that was going to judge you, right?
No, no one's going to. You know what? That if you want to go to a place where you will least be judged, go into one of those rooms with whatever addiction you may have, because you will least be judged in those rooms.
And I think and now from there, I know every day, and we talk about this, you and I, that yes, the next day, and there was the next day, and there was the next day. But also, beyond that, you also fight your demons every day, though. I mean, people, I know you have such a faith, Shauna, and you and I, both the same thing. I almost lost my life, and I was on my knees the same way, praying for redemption, praying for another day. I know that, and I know what it feels like. And both you and I know that there's a power that helps us through everything. But there are days, right, even now, that maybe aren't that easy, right?
Oh, I mean, it's funny because, Christmas is around the corner. And what are great little things that people love to put into your Christmas cards? Scratch and win tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I remember the first year of my recovery, my brother goes and gives me a scratch and win tickets. And I said to him, I'm in recovery. And he goes, yeah, but that's a scratch and wins. Well, what's the big deal? Well, today, here I am 10 years later, it's not a big deal to me because I was never an issue. But at that time, that could have been a trigger point for me that would have spiraled me back into being in front of a VLT machine. I just went on to a Christmas party with my boyfriend this past Saturday, and it was at the Northlands track, which for those who don't know was a racetrack. And so part of the fun for your Christmas party was betting on the races, and then right beside where we were dining was the VLTs and the casino part. Now, for someone that's, again, in recovery, it's everywhere. It's around. Those temptations are there. And to know that, for me, is part of my recovery is vocalizing to people where I was and where I'm going so that they understand, why I don't maybe go out to the casino with them or why I don't do certain things or, to let them know who I am today. I'm not embarrassed to tell people my story. I was more embarrassed to be that gambler than I am to be this person in recovery and to help others. So, it's everywhere. And you start to think about, like, if someone's addicted to food, that's a common everyday thing that we all do. We eat. Sex. We all, well, I shouldn't say we all, but the majority of people out there enjoy sex. So, now it's become an addiction. Pornography. I mean, things are so accessible on the internet today. You can get pornography, you can get gambling, you can get whatever almost you want off the internet. And people don't even have to leave their homes for their addictions. It's right in front of them, a computer.
Yeah, very, very convenient. That's for sure. Exactly. So that would obviously make it much more difficult for someone to actually face it. Because like you said, you would go to places where you wouldn't nobody would know you. Right? But then if you can hide in your bedroom or in the bathroom and, Wi-Fi it up, that would make it much more difficult, I would think, to actually even face it because, I'm at home. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yep. Absolutely. It's like I have my drink, I have my smokes, I have my, tokes or whatever, and then I have my computer. I mean, it's all there. I mean, the less that you have to venture away and have to deal with people and have to deal with things, then it's better. Addictions is a very solitary sickness. It's very much about being alone, and you segregate yourself from others. You start socializing. I mean, how many weddings and birthdays and family get-togethers I missed throughout the years. I mean, I a lot of my friendships had gone to the wayside because I stopped putting in effort. I mean, why would I want to go to a concert, or why would I want to go out with supper with friends? That sounds boring when I could be in my comfort of my addiction and gambling. And that started to take precedent over everything else.
Wow, amazing. Linda, I'm sure you have some questions for Shauna.
I do. One of the things that I have found, Shauna, that we as human beings are really good at is justifying to ourselves when we want to do something or we don't want to do something. So I guess if you could talk with the listeners a little bit about some of those justifications that I'm sure that you used for yourself, and then how did you, what changed or what, I guess, self-talk were you able to change to kind of squelch that justifying voice in your head?
Well, you're right, Linda. It is about justifying because, when things are great, you go and gamble. When things are bad, you go and gamble. It's the same with any other addiction. It's raining, so it's a good day to go gambling. Oh, the sun is shining. It's a good day to go gambling. Everything is justifiable. For me, it was about, honestly, like Mark had said, my faith. If I didn't have my higher power, I know for me, and for me that's God. I mean, I would not be where I am today. All I did was a lot of praying, and I had this certain little prayer that I would say, and I could tell you I probably said that 100 times a day because, any little thing could trigger it. But that and my son, who, was a huge factor, is that I didn't, he was growing, his life, he was born to an addict. I was an addict. I would go gamble when I was pregnant and, gamble till he was 6 years of age. So I didn't want him to have to continually to live a life with an addict. And I guess it's just remembering better priorities. And hugely to deal with the emotions, because I think that's part of what recovery is about, is that if you don't deal with your emotions, if you don't deal with the things that have brought you to be the addict that you are, you're like what they call a dry alcoholic, for example, where, they're not drinking, but they still carry the traits and attitudes of an addict. It's not until you're actually in recovery, until you're actually dealing with the steps, you're actually dealing with forgiveness of yourself and to those who have hurt you, and to deal with the emotional pain that's contributing to what got you in that place, you won't recover. You really won't. You will either be at a standstill or you'll relapse.
Very interesting. And I think you touched on something too that I think is very important, not only for addiction, but I think for other things too. We hear out there from some well-intentioned people give us little blurbs about, if you think something or you feel something negative, just be positive, just be positive. But nobody's ever really explaining it. At least some of those aren't. The true teachers do explain how you do that, but it's not as easy as just stamping out a negative thought or a negative emotion, is it? Don't you have to face it and then release it and replace it with something else?
Absolutely. I mean, I call tears healing rain. And, every time I share my story, I usually cry because I'm continually healing and I'm continually, growing as I go forward. And the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to realize that we can stay where we are or we can grow forward. and to deal with the issues that need to be dealt with. We are huge avoiders of confrontation or of hurt and pain. Deal with the hurt. Ask for those that you've hurt for forgiveness. Forgive those who have hurt you. And the third thing, the most important thing, forgive yourself. Those are 3 huge things for someone to go forward with. And I think that is the biggest thing that we can do for each other, because it's recognizing anybody that's got an addiction right now or is struggling right now. I'm going to tell you, just after this, just take some quiet time for yourself and figure out, when did you first start really gambling, or where it started to happen? Because it will be because around that time something very emotional has happened to you. And to what could be emotional to me, like the death of my father, which was a huge thing, could be something as small as someone hurting you, someone causing pain, a breakup of a relationship, someone calling you something that hurt you, a childhood memory. And a lot of things do come from childhood memories. Go back to when the addiction had started, not when it got to be out of control, but when it first started. And there you will start to see, where you will start to be able to recognize why you are or where you are at in your life with addiction.
Well, Shauna, does that mean, like, if we're thinking about that, and then they really have to travel back, like, how far does this go? I mean, I can't even get inside that headspace. I know I'm an impulsive personality, so I generally am very strict about what I do or don't do, because I know that I could easily go into excess on anything just because that's my personality. But if someone's sitting here right now, when they go back in time, is it when they had, when what is it? When it stopped being fun, or when it stopped being, where did they start? When is that track? And when is it off the rails?
When it actually started. When was the first time you ever had a drink? When was the first time you started looking at pornography? I have a friend of mine who, was huge into pornography, and it started when his dad died at the age of 16. Unbeknownst to him, it was just something that he kind of did. He found the magazines. Did it become a problem then? No, but it became a problem in his adult years and affected his marriage. So, you have to look at, when did those things kind of become more important than something else. For me, even with my dad's death, what I realized more so was not just that my dad had died, I felt he had abandoned me. And when I was about 4 years old, I remember my parents having a fight in front of me, and my mom walked out of the house and said, "That's it, I'm leaving you and the kids." And I remember at that point, I felt abandonment. And I remember grabbing my dad's hand, going, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, go get Mommy, go get Mommy." And they just had a fight, and everything was fine. But to me, as a 4-year-old, it affected me so badly. So here was an issue where my dad left me. He abandoned me. He died on me. And I didn't know how to deal with that. And then everything else just kind of snowballed from it. It wasn't because of anything else than the hurt and pain. And I had to forgive my dad for dying. I had to say out loud at one point in time, I forgive you for dying. I know you didn't want to die. I forgive you. And I'm sorry for blaming you. And that was huge. And when you can do those things, they're so powerful. They're so powerful. And you break the strongholds of what those addictions are that are hanging on to you, and you can finally let go of them. And it's those simple things. And by talking to other ones, by sharing your story, getting counseling, telling your family members, whatever the case may be, you're not alone. And before these things become so escalated, nip it while you can. And know that people do care and people do want to help. And you have to seek it. It's not going to come knocking on your door. You have to seek it, because you deserve that. You deserve a better life than being an addict.
Well, Shauna, again, we're at the bottom end of our half an hour here. I wish we could speak to you for another 2 hours.
It goes so quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes by really fast. Linda and I do this all the time, going, what? But the one thing I do want to say is I sincerely appreciate and thank you for being here tonight. I know that, our phone lines lit up I've gotten PM messages on Facebook all week long, emails, people really wanting this type of show. And you brought it to us with all of your heart, like you always do. And I sincerely appreciate you being here. And as always, I leave the last words to my co-host, Linda.
Oh, thank you, Mark. And I want to echo Mark's appreciation, Shauna. You are very courageous, and I love you for that. And thank you so much for coming on our show. What you have just given to all of the listeners who are live and those listeners who are going to listen at a later time is invaluable. You have truly given of yourself tonight, and I really appreciate it. There is one thing that you said that I want to emphasize because I think that it is so incredibly important. No matter what the addiction, no matter what the struggle even that someone is going through, I think that number one that we all should do on a regular basis, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself first, and the rest will fall into place.
Absolutely. If you can forgive yourself, you're on the road to recovery. Absolutely. I want to thank you, ladies, so much for having me. It's been an honor to be on your talk show. I listen to you guys all the time, so thank you for having me. And to all the listeners, do know that you're not alone, and people do care. So thank you, ladies.
Well, thank you, Shauna. And from Mark here in Canada, good night, my friends.
And from Linda down in Florida, good night.